Welcome to the Tim Castle Live Show, where we meet courageous people doing inspirational things around the world. All right, I want to welcome you to a series myself and Chris Jarvis, author of Be the Giraffe, have put together for your listening pleasure. And I think there's just so many moments of gold packed into this, moments that will transform you. I've broken them into sessions of 20 minutes so that you can get maximum value. If you're on a walk, on a run, on the way to work, on a commute, on a bus, on a train, on a plane, wherever you are, just take this 20 minutes and absorb these lessons. Be the Giraffe is phenomenal. It's a book that touched my soul, and I believe it will touch yours. It will transform you. It will change how you approach that stress, that overwhelm, and actually just living a better life. And being able to do it across all verticals, across wealth, health, fun, happiness. Chris has the Wild Factor. And that's also a tool that you can go to chrisjarvis.me/Wild Factor to download. So I recommend you do that. This is a very special series coming from me and Chris to you to help you change your life, to transform and to get more out of life, more of the good stuff. So without further ado, welcome to the series.
That's beautiful, man. Like, yeah, that's it. I was just telling my friends and obviously my family and people about the impact of your book, and just obviously we had I don't know why I didn't see the email, but it doesn't pop up on the phone, I think internet, and then I saw it and I was like, oh, okay, this could happen tomorrow, let's make it happen, because I was literally just talking about the profound effect that to my sister actually about, like, I listened to Be the Giraffe and it just hit me, and I unpacked all this. It gave me an answer that to a question I didn't know but the body felt I had, but I didn't know I had. And then it was just like, when and then I realized, oh yeah, it's tomorrow. Let's try and make it happen. Let's jump on and continue that conversation, because the last conversation I loved. But there's just so many parts of the actual book that I think, and just having this dialogue with you in this conversation, that I think for the listeners, just it unpacks so much. So, I mean, Chris Jarvis, great to have you back on the show if we do a formal introduction like that. But I think if we could spend a bit of time talking about one of the questions I think that people have is, when you start to experience success, or you start to become more of who you originally are or should be, or you're more okay with, who you are, but friends, family, your circle, they don't necessarily. And I think in the book you talk about lions, beware of lions and hyenas, which is probably a good place to start. But you're rising to those superior heights using your unique strengths, which is the giraffe, right? What do you do to then bring friends with you or not? Like, how do you cope with having success and then dealing with that problem of people not necessarily being happy for what you've achieved, or you've elevated that perspective, but they don't really want you to elevate that perspective?
You asked the question how. I presume you're asking what's the advice. You're not asking me how I did it. But if you did ask me how I did it, I would first say horribly. Like, really ineffectively, just not well. At first, it was really, I went through I'll share this just to see if this is relatable for anybody listening. Is, at first it was, I've done this thing and I'm moving on, and you pathetic souls are stuck in the past, and you're thinking so little, and so there were parts of it in the beginning, going back 20 years, of thinking of them as less than in some ways, and then like I'm kind of better, or there was some of that, which is not healthy and or helpful in any way. Then there was some, how come you can't see it? And I think that's some interesting advice a friend of mine gave me was, when people are really confident in what they believe, they don't try to convince other people to believe what they believe. And when somebody really is focusing on or trying to get you to believe what they believe or adopt what they've adopted, it's usually because they're not that confident in that example themselves. Like they need you. And I have some friends who I'm not particularly religious at all. And I have a number of very close friends who are devout, I mean, really devout Christians and have very, very strong beliefs. And the ones who have the strongest faith spend no time at all trying to convert me.
Hmm.
We can have deep conversations about things, but for them, it's not about the beliefs, it's about the values. And if they see that I'm living similar values to them, that's enough. They don't need me to believe to pick up the same book. It's less
Hmm.
about what I say I am and more about who I am and what I do. And so this whole people trying to convince you is because they're not sure. And I'm sure I went through that myself with the how can you people live on the East Coast? Why don't you come out to California? California is great. You should move out here. Hey, get
Right.
out of this career and look and invest in yourself and go back to school and get your master's or do this or whatever it is. It's all like so, for me. So that's what I did. And then I got to a place where when people would caution me like, oh, how do you handle the traffic or how do you handle the weather or how do you handle the taxes or how do you like whatever that stuff is, all of those things come from fear. And so I'd say in my journey of handling it better, it became appreciating them and their advice for where it came from in them, not necessarily in what it sounded like to me. So for example, um, there was a story, there isn't a story. I adopted my wife's children, my stepkids at one
Right.
point and
Yeah.
I shared that with my dad that I was thinking about it. And my dad was a pretty evolved person, and he expressed some concern, like why, you sure that's a good idea? Just he expressed concern for me, and we had a good conversation, and I appreciated it. At the time,
Hmm.
I did it at a time. I think I discussed last episode. It was a time when my relationship with the kids wasn't as great as it. It wasn't a reward. It was literally I don't want to say desperate, but rather significant attempt to say things aren't going well. Maybe this is the thing that will change things, which
Hmm.
was a huge move on my part, I think at the time. And, very proud that I did it and really happy about how it worked out. Um, but when he expressed concern the next day, he called and said, I was way out of line. I'm so sorry. That's none of my business. And honestly, what I felt at the time was, said, Dad, I appreciate the concern because of where it came from. You know that I give of myself perhaps too much. I don't take care of myself. I take a lot of responsibility. And you seeing me
Hmm.
taking more responsibility, which could pull me away from taking care of myself, your statement came from a place of love and concern. And that's what I took it as. Not
Hmm.
not as you don't agree with me, you don't approve of it. It was you're just trying to look out for me. And when I had taught a 2-day $1 million financial advisor workshop for 40 people a couple years ago, I had posed a question similar to what you just said to me, Tim, what you just asked of me. Someone else asked in that session and said, how do you handle the fact that you're successful and people around you aren't? And if they come to your house and look around and say, oh, it must be nice. And the
Hmm.
response is, yeah, it's nice that I fucking work hard. Like that's what's nice. It's not like this wasn't just dropped in my lap. Like I worked
Yeah.
for this. And so then I asked the question of the group, how many of you feel guilty about your success when you're talking to your parents, your siblings, your cousins, your close friends? And of the 40 people in the room, I think at the time maybe it was down to 30 because some people couldn't stay for 2 days and this was a day 2 question. Um, I think 90% of the people said that there were people in their life that they felt guilty sharing their success with because they had had negative interaction. And so, we worked through that for hours in different ways to look at it and how to manage it. And I can't say I'm perfect at this, but I do a pretty good job of much better job now than I did of realizing that when people are afraid for you or they have their own fears, that they're just showing concern. It's not that they don't believe you can do it. It's not necessarily that they don't want you to do it. For them, it's the, oh, you sure you want to do that? Or, most small businesses fail. Most investments in startups go to zero. It's like, this isn't them judging you. This is them just protecting you, because if you're hurt, they would hurt for you. So that's going to happen when you level up. It is. I just had a really interesting call with a guy who has a networking group, a mastermind of visionaries. It's the only people he works with. And, this whole idea that visionaries just find a way to get things done and everybody else finds excuses. And that was a super, Justin Breen was his name, super impressive guy. And it was this idea that visionaries just, I thought about the podcast and I had said, so what, now what? That's the view of, I can't change the past. All I can do is go forward. I can learn from the past, but I can't wallow in it. So when you realize that the people who are concerned and worried, if you're going to be a visionary, if you're going to be a leader, if you're going to excel, you're going to do things differently. And just by nature of you doing things differently, there has to be inherent risk. So people have to be concerned, because if you're going to do something and somebody else has done it, then it's not very innovative. It's not leadership. It's not, it's not pioneering. It's not going to have great rewards either. So, this whole, everybody wants to be an outlier. They want to have more money than everybody else, but they don't want to be an outcast.
Yeah.
So I just want to be one of the guys and be like everybody else, but I want to end up with 10 times as much money. It's like, dude, doesn't work that way. You are going to, I don't mean alienate people and being, a horrible person, but you have to accept the fact that you're not like them. And if you're going to be a leader, a visionary, that's a 1 in 1,000. That means 999 people aren't going to see things the way you do. So you have to be prepared for, for that. And there is a chapter in the book about that whole breaking free from the herd. And, the whole idea of the herd mentality is about safety. It's imperative that everybody stay in the herd, because it's the safety in numbers. And when somebody leaves, then it weakens the overall, it just changes their odds. Right. So, right. The lions are going to take down 1 zebra a day. And if there's 1 million zebra, that your odds are pretty good. If there are 10, not so much. If there are 3, it's really starting to look not so good at all. Right? So, so people, some of it is just realizing you're going to be different. And that's the Maslow's hierarchy idea of the super successful people define, we have security, then we have we have survival, then we have security. So survival, if you can't breathe, you're not thinking about self-actualization and, legacy. You're just thinking about breathing. If you're not safe at home, not safe in your neighborhood, not safe somewhere, that's going to dominate your thoughts. The next one is love and belonging. And it's just the definition of what is love and belonging. And that's where the biggest shift is between the super successful people and people who are unsuccessful or moderately successful, is they think love and belonging is fitting in. And the people who are successful don't think that way. It's not that they don't want to fit in. They just accept the fact that they're different. And there's going to be, leaders just have a different role. Innovators have a different role. And so they don't ask, they're not trying to get everybody to agree, because they realize that's not, that's just not, it's just not that important, right? Like leadership and innovation is not a democratic approach, because a democratic approach always, it always leads to a boring result. And there was a book I wrote, 6 Secrets to Leveraging Success. An old client, a friend of mine, they were a client and I was a client of theirs at the same time. But these 2 guys had built a furniture company and they still have it. And they do interior design, and they had been on those TV shows and had done all this interesting stuff. And they said, if you ask a dozen people to agree on a color, you'll always get beige. You just always get beige, because nobody loves it, but nobody hates it. So everybody will be okay with it. But if you said, we're going to go with lime green, some people are going to go crazy. Can't paint the walls lime green. You can't, can't make the chairs purple. You can't make the, can't make the ceiling yellow. You can't, whatever it is, you just, whether it's a couch, and then, sure enough, I've given this presentation in hotel conference rooms, and you look around and everything's beige. and they just look, as soon as I say it, people start looking around. It's like, yeah, well, that's, so the point
It's
is people there won't be anything super interesting. There'll
mhm.
be, like even in selling a house, realtors will say, paint everything white, paint everything gray, beige, because you don't want to offend people. And the truth is that nothing stands out. So they don't
Yeah.
want to remove any potential buyers, but you just want to find the one who loves it. So anyway, I'm going
But
way off on a whole lot of tangents on that question, Tim. But
no, that's really cool because it shows how you did it the first time.
oh
And
yeah, I mean, you learn. You just well, there's things people say, and then there's things that people mean, right? And that's a big. I've used this example before, not not in our conversations, but like if my wife's in the kitchen and she's cooking, and I come up and scare her, but she happens to be holding a knife, and she turns around and stabs me with it. The intention wasn't anything. Like she didn't intend to do that. I just scared her, and it was unfortunate. The outcome was horrible, but the intention was absolutely nothing, right? Nothing negative at all.
right,
It was like minding her own. She was actually doing me a favor. She was cooking dinner or doing something or making something, whatever it was, something in service of me, and it just was an unfortunate accident. That was horrible, but the intention was not negative. The flip side is you could have somebody who's, so tired of, somebody you work with, or it could be your spouse, it could be anybody who tries to sabotage your presentation, tries to sabotage
hmm,
you in some way, and like deletes a file or does something poorly, or like really tries to hurt you. But at the end, you get there and you don't have the files, so you just wing it and you still get the client. So in that situation, the impact is minimal, right? It didn't cost you
right,
anything. You didn't have the thing you thought you needed, but the intention was pretty malicious.
right.
So I just use that example that if we think about that, which one was worse? Well, the outcome was one worse, but there's no reason to be mad at my wife. It was just unfortunate that I got stabbed in the kitchen. If she accidentally stabbed me 42 times, that's different. But, assuming it's only once, that's way different than the person who's trying to sabotage you, who, um, so I think part of that for me is exploring what's the intention behind the statement. And sometimes the intention is very positive. They're looking out for me.
Hmm.
Sometimes it has nothing to do with me, and the person is just afraid because they can't do it. So this,
Yes.
like it could be a very little thing for them, but they're thinking little. They're in
Yeah.
a, in a lack kind of mindset as opposed to an abundance mindset, and they're just so, but that says nothing about you,
Hmm.
right? That's not, the person who acts out or steals from you, but or they got something going on, but they're just in a really bad place. It's not personal. Like they're just, kids act out. I mean, people just do things. So it's just getting to what's the intention. And then you realize, ooh, this person's really afraid for whatever reason. It's not about me. It doesn't mean like they want me to be successful. They're just afraid, or they put themselves in that place. Like it's too much risk. I couldn't handle that. So of course they're going to be cautious, or they're going to caution you against doing it because sometimes they're afraid that they're going to lose you. Maybe that's part of it too. So the intention is they want you in their life. They're just afraid that you're going to move on, go to another place, moving on up to the east side. You're never going to see them,
Mm.
whatever,
And so instead of trying to convince them that you're right, you don't need, like you said in your example at the beginning, you were trying to convince, you actually just, you move as you move. And instead of getting triggered by their comments, you understand the intention. So therefore you can understand that it's literally, it's not them not believing that you can't do it. It's the fear, their fear. And this is just their way of articulating it. They feel better. And then you have to make a decision. And it's sort of like saying, well, I've got to elevate my perspective now, because if I can get triggered by this and just stay in that energetic zone and take on their belief, then I'm going to go smaller and I'm going to play smaller, and I'm not actually like rolling with my
I'm gonna
unique
stay.
strength.
If
Right.
you listen to the herd, if
In
you
the
listen
herd.
to all the
Yeah.
voices in the herd, if you listen to all the voices in the herd, you will stay in the herd.
Right. I'm not the one out of
That's a
nine.
that's a guarantee. I mean, I guarantee if you only talk to people, if you talk to 100 people who all believe making 100,000 pounds a year or $100,000 a year is a lot of money, then you'll believe that making 100,000
Yeah.
pounds or $100,000 is a lot of money. If you talk to people who believe making $100 million isn't that difficult, and those people you talk to, you will believe that making $100 million is not difficult.
Right.
Like that is just whatever the beliefs are. If you keep hearing them all the time, you can be strong and separate yourself from other people. But I think the corollary to the question or the follow-up is, okay, then given what that is, who do I spend time with? Rather than getting really good at letting all of this roll off your back or developing a thick skin so you don't take it seriously, that's the chapter of Beware Lions and Hyenas, with the idea that lions are predators and hyenas might be scavengers. The idea is if they're just taking away from you, you should spend less time with the people who stress you out or make you uncomfortable. In addition to changing your perspective so it doesn't bother you as much, you should still not tempt yourself, right? Like my dad was an alcoholic, but he hadn't had a drink for the last 40 years of his life. But he also he wasn't so confident in that he hung around in bars.
Right.
Right. So, it was like, yeah, I've done this, but it wasn't like I'm going to tempt fate. Like you still try to put yourself in situations that are good for you. So some of this is developing a better understanding of yourself when you're faced with bad situations. But the other side of it is making a significant effort to put yourself in environments that are more positive so you don't have to.
But that's the build your tower piece, right? You literally go, right, I have noticed how, yes, I can build a thicker skin, and I really would like to dial down how I feel when I'm around these comments. And you get ownership over that, but then you go, but this is who I'm going to fill my time with. These are the people in my tower that are going to elevate me again and help me, rise and want to see my unique strengths come out.
And that's a wrap. Thank you for sharing and rating this show. It helps us reach more people and spread the message. That message is the believe it as possible message. I want you to believe in you, believe in the situation, and believe in your bigger life. That's why I created the School of Success. It's a selection of short courses that can help boost your skill acquisition in negotiation, sales, and self-transformation. This is where it's at, and I want you to win. I want you to build your empire, the empire of you, and become more. So if you're looking to know how to deal with difficult people, to negotiate at an expert level, to sell, and to become more yourself, to develop your mindset, your confidence, to be able to then think about how to elevate your business, this might be for you. So head on over to the School of Success and look at the links in the show notes and get on over there and check out the short courses that we have for you.